Former Obama White House chief of staff and longtime Democratic strategist Bill Daley calling out his own party for its current direction. In a Wall Street Journal op-ed criticizing New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani, Daley writes the following. He says, quote, Democrats rightly deplore the Republican Party for capitulating to Donald Trump and an agenda that threatens democracy and decency. But we'd better pause and note how our own party is creeping dangerously close to an agenda that's equally outlandish and radical. Bill Daley joins us this morning right now. He's also serves as President Clinton's Commerce Secretary. I should say did in the past. I said that almost as if it was the present. Bill, I read the op-ed, and I think the question is the Democratic Party still your Democratic Party?
Well, I think we will see. This is a great example. The candidate in New York is a member of the Democratic Socialist Party. He has said he's a member of that party. That party's agenda and its platform is extremely radical. And we saw this movie when the Tea Party basically began to take over the Republican Party. And moderate Republicans were saying, well, don't worry, we can work with them. Then they threw Cantor out. They threw Boehner out. Ryan out as speaker. Obviously, the President Trump came along and they joined forces. The Tea Party was first one to question President Obama's birth, whether he was born in Kenya or in Hawaii. And so Trump jumped on that. And we're seeing to a certain degree this far socialist, some call progressive part of society, basically trying to take over the Democratic Party. I have no problem if someone wants to be a member of the Socialist Party. Not that socialism has worked anywhere in the world, but be honest about it. And I think Democrats, leaders of the Democratic Party, have to ask this gentleman, where do you stand? You talked earlier about the global intifada that he wouldn't really reject on Sunday's talk show. An intifada calls for violence. It is a global violence because of the difference with Israel. So I think there's some serious differences that if the Democratic leaders don't stand up and begin to ask questions, we did see where some of these progressive socialists, whatever you want to call them, left the party last fall and helped elect Donald Trump.
Right.
They didn't support
Bill,
Donald
but here's the question, at least in the city of New York. The
Right.
options at this point, and I'm imagining Cuomo is out. I imagine Cuomo may take himself out. I imagine Cuomo's out. Either way, I'm putting him on the side for a moment. Then the options, like the genuine options, become Mamdani or become Eric Adams. A lot of folks seem to think that Eric Adams, as we've discussed before, is a hostage of President Trump's, given this sort of unique and strange settlement that he's reached there. And so the question is, this goes back to some people looked at the last election and they said, look, the options, we don't like the options, but this is how we're going to look at the options. What do you think people do?
Well, I'm not going to tell New Yorkers what they ought to do. Obviously, they'll make that decision. But life is about choices. You've seen Mayor Adams, and I'm not defending what he's done, but he has run the city for 4 years. The Democratic nominee today is early 30s, extremely dynamic, extremely attractive to young people especially. But this is a $200 billion company with, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of employees in New York. That is a massive job to undertake. Right. And so one has to look at maybe two bad choices and make a judgment as to what's the best thing for the long-term future of New York City. The Democratic Party leaders have to look at this and make a decision what's good for the Democratic Party.
Why do you think that Eric Adams has not gotten the credit, for example? By the way, crime in New York City over the last year is actually down about 30%. I mean, it's meaningful. There are meaningful things that you can look to related to Eric Adams. My supposition is that it's all clouded by everything else as it relates to this case and Trump and everything else, and that for some Democrats, for them that's a bridge too far.
Exactly. I think all the sideshow around the trial and then his deal with the Trump administration clouds whatever he has done, good or bad, in the city of New York. But again, this is a massive job running the largest city in the world. It is a difficult job, and it is one that really I would hope that the people of New York, as other citizens of big cities, look at this as a management job and not just a platform to spew whatever opinions people have about life.
But, Bill, to the extent you talk about management, I would look back at the time that Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor of the city, and I would say the city was almost at its zenith, at least in recent memory. By the end of Bloomberg's third term, and I know there was debate about even the third term itself, the Democratic Party had turned against him. And, they didn't like stop and frisk. They didn't like lots of things about, again, inequality and everything else that they thought had come into the city.
Right. Well, there's legitimate issues. You mentioned it earlier, Andrew, about affordability and housing and other issues. They're serious. I do agree with you that I think Bloomberg's tenure was incredible, especially the first two terms. Third term gets very, very difficult, and people get tired. They want somebody new in the thing. They left him and went to de Blasio, which was a difficult 8 years. But I think that people have got to look at this as a management job. It is not just a platform, as I said, to spew whatever opinions one has about life. It is a serious job. And you've got, 20 million people living in New York City who depend upon strong leadership. And I think that the voters over the next number of months have got to really ask questions. And the leaders of the Democratic Party nationally have got to look at, is this very, very, very left socialist piece of the Democratic Party going to take over the Democratic Party as the far right, far right Tea Party people took over anti-government.
That was my question to you. Do you think that we're extrapolating? I mean, there's a lot of articles that are suggesting Mamdani is the future of the Democratic Party, that this is not just an issue that's idiosyncratic to New York City. This is the future of the way this is going to go in the rest of the country. Do you believe that?
No, not at all. Look, in urban America, yes, it's Chicago, New York, big cities, but that's not America totally. You go to suburban areas, you go to rural areas in America, it is a very different electorate. The electorate nationally is center, maybe center left, center right, somewhere in that middle. Donald Trump won this last election because he had people who were in that center right or even center who went with him as opposed to the alternative. But the idea that a socialist is going to win a national election, I think that's quite a stretch to see that happen, considering, especially in this Democratic Socialist Party that this gentleman in New York is a member of. And you look at the agenda: no border, open borders, do away with ICE, get out of NATO, close military bases around the world, defund the police. Really? You think that's going to get...
I understand that you don't think they'll win a national election, and I agree with that. But can someone like that win a primary? And I'm not talking Mamdani, but if you look at any polls right now, they all have AOC at the top of the list in terms of who would win a Democratic primary right now.
Becky, I don't disagree with you. I think if Bernie Sanders was 10 years younger, he'd be the nominee of the party in 3 years at the way this party is going. Do I think he would win a general election? I think it would be very, very hard. Because, again, it's a very different electorate. Can this sort of candidate win a Democratic primary? I think it is going to be very challenging for the other candidates who want to run in 3 years to beat that back, unless they have a very attractive, not only agenda, but this candidate, from what I read, is extremely attractive, very good on social media. He gets where the young people are. He can stimulate them. And that's great in a primary. Only 1 million people voted in the primary in New York City last week.